Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Living Stronger Longer, the podcast. Today I'm joined by Richard Wolff from St. Charles, I believe, just outside of
Yes.
Chicago. And
Yep.
Richard operates a facility similar to mine, maybe different in some ways. We'll learn more about it today, called MedFitness. And
Mhm.
I'm very pleased to have him he talks about he often on the internet, you may have seen him on my page, the MedFitness Minute. He often does these really short clips of really useful information, and I've always enjoyed, and I'm looking forward to getting to know Richard better. So, Richard, as I mentioned, starting out, you've been doing this for a while, but like many of us, there was a journey that took us to this approach to exercise and strength training. Many times sports backgrounds, other times not. Tell me a little bit about your journey.
Sure, Richard. Well, first, thank you for having me. It's my pleasure to be with you today. Anytime we get a chance to talk strength training, it's fun. My formal journey, I would say, began in 1983. I was in college studying nutrition, and I started working at the local YMCA, and they had a Nautilus strength training center there. And so, like many young men, growing up in the 70s, I was obsessed with lifting weights, as were my brothers. And we had been strength training, not calling it that, but lifting weights for quite a while. And then was introduced to Nautilus in 1983 and worked there for 7 years through college and really got somewhat indoctrinated with that whole approach, as you know, the full body, high intensity Nautilus training equipment. I think we were using a 4x4 speed protocol back then. And then, of course, graduated. I became a registered dietitian, which is just a professional nutrition credential in the United States. And that was really my launching into working then. I went to work with my brothers at Elgin Nautilus, really a strength training studio in the community we lived in at the time. And that was a pre-existing business that we had the opportunity to purchase. And it was a couple lines of Nautilus, and it was all about high intensity. And that sort of initiated the journey. I worked with my brothers for 21 years. Our business name was Wolff Fitness. And so some of our colleagues know us as Wolff Fitness. We did high intensity strength training, both appointment based and non-appointment based. And in 2009, I launched MedFitness, which is really the same thing, just my own company, independent of my brothers. And we've been doing that as MedFitness for 14 years. So it's been about 35 years of experience in the industry at some level, and just loving every second of it and grateful to do what you were born, what it seems like to do, because it's just
Right?
in your DNA. People ask me, I said, how'd you get into this? It's just in my DNA. I can't help it. So,
Yeah. Well, interesting. It was around 1981 when I started working out. And then I first read the Nautilus bodybuilding book. It was the first book
yeah,
I read.
yeah,
So I'm thinking, was that published in 82 or was that published earlier in the 70s? That's when I discovered it, but I think I might be off
yeah,
a decade. It might have been, or
yeah,
at least the first edition.
right.
And of course, I lived in a small town where there were no Nautilus machines. I remember driving 3 hours uh, just because there was a YMCA in Sudbury, a city 3 hours
Right,
south of us,
right.
that had Nautilus machines. And in those
Yeah,
early books, of course, Ellington Darden would talk about them almost as though they were magic
that's right.
type of thing. And
Pretty
and
much.
and so it was interesting. So our paths have continued. Of course, you went into business with it. I did that later. I went into financial services and only started this as a second career after retiring. So
Okay.
you mentioned that even back then you were doing appointments and not appointments. So personal training or exercise
Yeah.
instruction per se was a fairly rare thing back then. Am I right?
It was, yeah. I mean, we were doing, we called it a fitness center, of course. This would have been what that small studio when we moved and sort of expanded, and we called it Wolff Fitness. And it was a more conventional fitness center with some group fitness and treadmills and bikes, et cetera, along with our strength training. And then a colleague said, hey, I'm doing the super slow stuff here near you, not too far away. Let me show you what this is all about. And then we decided let's embrace the super slow protocol as an appointment-based option in our menu of services. And so we started doing that. That would have been early 90s. So, and once you get into that, you're just sort of deep in the water and you're looking for ways to optimize everything. So, but then we started using some of the MedX equipment, of course, and just continued to evolve from there. Today we have a mix of MedX and Nautilus. We just purchased a new Imagine Strength leg press, or anxious to introduce that into our lines at MedFitness. But all of the well-engineered, low-friction, well-designed strength equipment we consider valid tools to productive strength training.
So, yeah, the equipment is one of the things that goes with our methodology. Although we all know now that, if you were on a desert island tomorrow and all you had was body weight and, being able to hang from a tree, once you know the principles,
you could do it.
But I sometimes use the analogy with equipment, particularly with an older clientele.
Yeah.
That, I use the analogy of hammering in a nail. You could do it with a rock.
Yeah.
You had
absolutely.
Right. You can do it with a claw hammer, or you can do it with a nail gun.
Yeah. Right.
But with a nail gun, the odds of bending the nail or hitting yourself on the finger are much less. But
it's a good analogy.
If you're skilled,
yeah.
But the thing is, a lot of people, before we started recording, I talked about how maybe rare, really significant hypertrophy is.
Right.
But also athleticism per se.
Yeah.
Most people are not naturally athletic, right? Like if you look in the dictionary under the word, somebody I'm having a mental block here. Somebody who's awkward.
Oh, sure.
You're right.
Sure.
You see my picture there, right?
Yeah.
And so machines, for the vast majority of people, are much better, easier. I mean, you can still hurt yourself even on a good machine. You can still do it wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. It's harder, and that's a good point. I mean, and I think we share clients. I think our demographic is probably 60 to 90 people who've often never done anything their whole life and don't know what lifting weights is all about, but know that they understand they're getting weak. I now need to gain some strength to live my life the way I want to live it. Those folks, the machines make so much sense, of course, because we look at them and we say, gosh, I need to teach you how to use the machine. We need to practice the skill. I need to stay slow. That, of course, is a million times harder with free weights for those people. They just don't have the skill set and the motor skills to manage it as easily. So, right, I have an easier tool to implement.
Right. Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about your facility. How many trainers are there?
Yeah, there are 6 of us, and we, of course, we're appointment based, and we do full body 30-minute workouts. So every 30 minutes, we've got anywhere from 4 to 6 clients coming through the studio. So we've got 3 lines, we call it the A, B, and C line. Each line is 8 exercises. Each of those is a full body. So just some variety in terms of movement patterns and such, line to line. And our goal when people enroll and they're being trained by us is that we really provide that, we call it world-class supervision. I mean, we could eliminate our supervision and they could walk in and all chaos would break loose. So we understand the glue is the supervision, and our commitment is to really provide that every step of the way with every client and every workout. So it's something we constantly are trying to get better at. But it's, as you know, in our modern world, it's worth its weight in gold, because this is so valuable from a health standpoint. It's just mind-boggling to not have it as part of your lifestyle.
Yeah, I mean, I've had people who have left, not because they were dissatisfied, but for other extenuating reasons like moving away or things like that.
Yeah.
And I've always provided them with, here's a workout you can do on your own.
Right.
But few, if any, ever do.
Yeah. It's right.
afterwards, right? It's
I
just
know.
very few of them. So do you cycle people between the A, B, C, and lines, or do they?
We do. Yeah. So if you came in today and I trained you on the A line, then you go to the B, then you go to the C. So um, we added the C line, gosh, after the pandemic to sort of expand our offerings, and it's been great. It's been well received. So you've got 3 different workouts. Within the workout, we'll add some training techniques. The word we use is multipliers. It's just our word for, we call it advanced training techniques, ways of mixing up the exercise a little bit to add a little variety, but still within the scope of evidence-based, slow and controlled movement, high intensity, and so on. So they feel like the workout's a little bit fresh, workout to workout. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, I know that some studies have been done, and I always look at studies. I won't say skeptically is not the right word I'm looking for, but
Yeah.
I don't, that, certain things, whether it be forced reps or
Right.
breakdowns
Right.
or rest pause or whatnot, do not
Right.
measurably improve results per se.
Right. Right.
But I do think in many cases it keeps clients engaged and it keeps them
Yeah.
motivated, right?
You know what? I'm glad you said that, because when we introduced these multipliers several years back as a standard part of every workout, we got more unsolicited testimonials than of anything we've ever done. People just loved it to death. They said, "Oh my God, that was great what we did on the bicep curl. I loved it." Not that they weren't working hard, but they just liked a little bit of variety versus the same protocol every single time forever. And we decided, geez, they're going bonkers over this. We need to keep this as a part of our training process because they love it that much. So, and you're right, it's like healthy eating. If you're can eat healthy, it's nice to have some different recipes to mix up your healthy diet. You don't want the same food every day forever. So,
Right.
yeah,
So one of the things in talking about machines, one of the things recently, and I had a client come to me and she said that her family physician was very pleased
yeah,
that she had been working with me, but advised her that she should supplement what she's doing with me with free weights so
oh,
that she could mimic real world movements, I think was the term she used,
right,
because machines were fine, but free weights did a better job.
yeah,
And of course, it's really tough when, and I've had other people, I have another client whose brother is a surgeon who
yeah,
said the same thing. And I've said to them,
yeah,
they didn't learn that in medical school. They learned that,
no, right,
but when I Googled to look for, an article that rebutted it, the way I did my Google search, I found a whole bunch of different links that were endorsing that very methodology,
yeah,
including things like, and I could be wrong here, memory could be serving me, so if I'm attributing this wrong, seems to me like places like the Mayo Clinic and things like that,
really,
some really credible, supposedly credible sources that
yeah,
are advocating, whatever you want to call it, this functional thing, this idea
yeah,
of, stabilize your muscle. Do you ever
right,
feel overwhelmed by this,
right.
this information that seems to be coming that, I think I'm assuming here that based on the way you're nodding your head or whatever,
Yeah,
that you're on the same
yeah.
page as me with this.
Without a doubt.
Um,
Yeah, yeah.
because from
Well,
what I
and I
understand,
am,
this is not based
it,
on some good science.
no, no, who's done some good work recently is James Fisher at Salient University in the UK. And I can send you the paper that he published. Gosh, it was probably a decade ago, a review of a variety of sort of modern misconceptions relative to strength training. And that was one of them, the whole issue that you got to do free weights because there's a functional transfer that you don't get on machines. And it just is not, the data doesn't indicate that that's the case. So it's very much a promoted sort of mythology that continues to live and breathe despite evidence. And I think I wrote an article about this recently for our clients. And yeah, it's unfortunate. And thankfully, we haven't dealt too much with that with our clients. Once they get in the studio, they start experiencing it. they're all in because they feel great. They love everything about it, the efficiency, you name it, everything about it they love. And on occasion, someone will say, well, now I need to go do some functional training. And so we've tried to head that off by just better educating clients and writing articles and doing videos and so on. But certainly it's a misguided notion, that's for sure. And it, the soundbite that we use is, and you've probably heard it, is that, strength is general, the application of strength is specific. So once you get stronger by training your muscles, you can do dozens and hundreds of different movement patterns better. You don't have to practice those movement patterns with weights because that's not an efficient way to get stronger. So it's unfortunate, but it does exist, right?
Well, and I think managing expectations, because the fitness industry, and I mean, I always try to find good. Like if I see somebody that's strength training in a methodology that doesn't agree with mine, I want to give them credit where credit is due.
Yeah.
That, hey, they're getting to
Sure.
they're exercising, they're trying to get stronger.
Right.
Hopefully,
Right.
they're not doing anything too dangerous, rather than completely sort
Right.
of
Right.
criticize them. There may be
Yeah.
7 things wrong, but they're doing 3 things right. So I want to
Yeah.
emphasize that as well.
Absolutely.
But there's a lot of things out there that are kind of scary. And one of the things of managing expectations, of course, is a lot of fitness gurus. I mean, if you get your Apple Watch and you get these free workouts that come with it, and
Right.
the person who's directing the workout is invariably looks like a competitive bodybuilder or a fitness model, and they look
Right.
great.
Right.
And they're doing things where typically I'm going, I couldn't do that. I mean, the athleticism that's required to do some of these moves, I couldn't do
Right.
them, much
Yeah.
less my 64-year-old client,
Right.
right?
Right. Right.
And
Yeah.
then I kind of go, but then they look at that and they go, well, if I want to look like that person,
Right.
I
Right.
need to, do these sorts of things. But people
Yeah.
don't realize, and before we got on, I talked about, I guess I was talking about realistic expectations as to what you
Yeah.
can get from exercise. And
Right.
hypertrophy, muscle hypertrophy, getting your muscles bigger and increasing muscle mass is one of them. Just
Yeah.
perhaps not to the degree that
Yeah.
is sometimes exploited, while other benefits are underexploited. Now, one of your Med Fitness minutes I alluded to, you talked about as we get older that you lose strength
Yeah. Right.
faster possibly than you lose muscle mass. Can you expand on that?
Yeah. And so this, as you mentioned earlier, the traditional view of this has been that we correlate muscle mass to strength on this sort of 1-to-1 ratio. It's like I gain a little muscle, I gain a little strength, and they go 1-to-1. Well, we now know that's of course not the case, and that if you take someone off the street who has never strength trained and put them in your studio and they start training with you, you're going to see significant increases in strength rapidly early on, as long as they're consistent and they're working hard. Most of that improvement is neurological. It's this improvement in motor recruitment efficiency. It's not related to the physiology of the skeletal muscle itself. So without getting a lot bigger, they get a lot stronger. We, of course, see this with our clients all day, every day. And so it's this whole motor recruitment efficiency. Scientists would refer to this as sort of a deconditioning of the nervous system, which most people are oblivious to. Most consumers, they've never heard of this. So when we talk to clients about that, they sort of understand what we're saying, but it's new information. And of course, it's good news for those who give you the whole, I don't want to get big and bulky. Well, you will not get big and bulky,
Right.
even if you want to. And of course, more so for the ladies. But it's the central nervous system communicating with the motor unit more efficiently, unrelated to the physiology of the skeletal muscle itself. So this is really good news for people that just want to function better, be healthier, be safe, and so on, that they don't have to be Hercules to gain those benefits, which are so vital. I mean, that arguably, its strength loss is more damaging to independence today in modern societies than is muscle loss, even though they're correlated some, but we lose that strength more rapidly. than the rate that we lose muscle mass. Yeah.
And I think that was one of Ken Hutchins' arguments for not having too much variety in
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
program, and the idea of some people, of
Yeah.
course, embrace variety because they'll say, you start doing things differently and your gains will come back. And Ken,
Yeah.
not to put words in Ken's mouth because I may be paraphrasing him wrong, would say, well, all you're doing is starting the neurological adaptations over again. And
Yeah.
once you finish the neurological adaptations, if you stick with variety, then that's when you can actually start to get
Yeah.
gains in muscle mass. But I
Yeah.
think, because of, is it, what's the gene, myosin, or which the gene that regulates how much muscle you can grow? Is
Yes. Yes.
most
Yes.
people simply, are not destined. And I look at genetics, and one thing I explain to clients is I say, how many times does it happen in a public setting, outside of a local gym, where you see
Right.
somebody whose musculature is so impressive that it's actually head turning, where you take a second look and say, whoa, look
Right.
at that guy. And,
Right.
and I'd say, and I don't know whether it's numbers right, maybe about as often as you see someone who's over 6 feet 5 inches tall.
Yeah. Maybe so. Right. It's
You know what I mean?
uncommon.
And I
Right.
don't know whether that numbers do. And I says,
Yeah.
that's for a reason.
Yeah. Right. Right.
And
I mean, we refer to them as the 1%ers, and that's probably a high number. These people are the high responders. No matter what they do, they're going to be big and muscular. And if they have that genetic predisposition, if they train hard, they're going to accelerate that process. So they'll be super impressive, but they are definitely the 1%ers, if that. And most of us are normal humans here living on Earth. And no matter what we do, we're not going to get big and muscular. So, yeah.
So do you train the frequency with which you train your clients and yourself? What kind
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
frequency? Are you looking at once a week, twice a week?
Yeah, our program, we prescribe twice a week for our clients. I mean, we have some clients that train once a week, but we recommend twice a week, and I do once a week. And in a perfect world, if we didn't have this sort of scheduling that we do in our modern world today, I would probably strength train once every 4 days or 5 days, but to kind of stay in sync with the rest of the stuff that fills my life up, I do a twice a week routine. So yeah, full body. I'll usually add on an exercise or two. So I'll do 8 to 10 exercises for my workout twice a week, and train my neck and lower body, calves, and so on.
So those 8 to 10, I'm going to guess, how many of those would be the larger compound exercises along with a few
Yeah,
things like you were saying, your neck and
yeah.
that?
About half of them are compound big muscle groups. Yep, yep. And then half of them are single joint movements. Yep, right. So it's a pretty even mix, and clients seem to respond well to that. I mean, certainly, as you know, we could simplify that if we wanted to just kind of do linear exercises and hit them hard on 4 to 6 and just be done in less time if we really wanted to. But they like the idea of just a little more volume. It seems appealing to them to work the bicep, to work, the tricep, and so on. So there's a little bit of a balancing act in terms of stimulating muscle tissue and then having enough volume that they feel like they got high value from what they're doing. We used to do 6 exercises years ago, and then when we evolved to 8, so as a minimum dose. Yeah.
Okay, then.
So,
Now, the reason I asked about frequency is when I have had clients who, for whatever reason, they've gone away on a holiday, they've had an illness, they just weren't, when they go away, sometimes for as much as a month or more, when they come back, they sometimes say, well, you know where I'm going with this already.
I know where you're going. Go ahead.
They'll sometimes say, well, I hope you lowered the weights because I haven't been here in 3 weeks or a
Right.
month. And I
Right.
say, no, I've got the same weights that I was going to give you based on your performance the last time.
That's right.
And they almost invariably have their best workouts when they come
Yeah.
back. Your experience has
Right.
been similar, right?
Right. Yep. I just did that with someone today. A woman has been gone for 3 months. Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. Of course, they'll ask, oh, are these weights lighter? No, these are your same weights that I'm using today. So we're going to see what you can give me on this exercise. And they're often, they do well. I know. So it's, you know,
But what I tell people, and I don't know if this, I tell people now, because you haven't been here for a while, your perception of difficulty may be greater because you know, for a while there, when you first came here, you must have thought this was tough. But then
yeah,
after a while, you sort of, your attitude changed to bring it on, I can do this.
that's right. That's
And
right.
now it might be a little bit of, oh, geez, I forgot how tough these workouts were.
That's right.
But believe me, I says, just keep trying. And my experience has been that you're probably going to end up doing the same or more than you did before. I do find that sometimes conditioning wise, as
Yeah.
they get towards the end and the seventh or eighth exercise, if they
Mhm.
haven't been for a while, they may start to run out of gas a little bit at the end.
Yeah. Yeah, not uncommon, right? I've noticed some of that as well. And I think there's a lot to be said about what we would loosely refer to as their mental strength. I mean, when it's like any discipline, when you maintain a consistent routine with any habit and you have momentum with that habit, and it becomes somewhat reflexive and routine, you pull away from that. Getting back to that habit does take a lot of somewhat heavy lifting to establish that rhythm. And I think it applies to strength training too, both to do the behavior and to get back to that hard threshold that you were up before. You can get there, but those first workout or two, it's about shifting gears here and digging deep, and you hadn't been digging deep for the last 3 months. So I think for our clients, that's the case. You and I, we've been obsessed with this our whole life. So I think we can step back if we had a gap and hit it hard, but they take a little bit of acclimatizing to the process. Yeah.
Well, it's like many things, momentum and inertia, right?
That's right. That's right.
Whether it's dieting or whatever it is, when you've been doing it for a
Absolutely.
while, so and the twice a week, I find the benefit of it is I have once or twice a week. I've had people who have tried like every 2 weeks. And
Yeah.
I think the challenge, and I still think you can make progress even on that small
Yeah.
amount of time. The
Yeah.
problem is if your frequency becomes too far apart and then you miss one,
Yeah. Right.
then it
Right.
becomes quite a gap. Whereas if your schedule is twice a week and you happen to miss one,
Right.
it's no big deal. I even have some twice a week people that sometimes I'm going to say, if they have a workout that seems a little subpar, and I
Yeah.
ask a few questions about what's going on in their lives and things like that.
Yeah.
I might say, you know what, why don't you skip Friday and
Yeah.
come
Yeah.
back next week? Give your body a little bit extra recovery.
Absolutely. We see that sometimes. People, they need a break. I mean, of course, our modern world is so filled with tight schedules and busyness and whatnot. So sometimes a little break is good here. Rest, renew, come back fresh. We'll work hard. But yes, that's a surprising how they can do well with a little less training sometimes and not miss a beat. So yeah, yeah,
So with your nutrition background,
yeah,
do you offer nutritional counseling? Part one of this question. Part two of this question is,
yeah.
whether you do or not, what have you changed your mind about nutrition wise from what they taught you in school back then?
That's right. Yeah, yeah. Well, we do some nutrition counseling. It's our core business. When people ask us, I always tell them our core business is strength training. So that's what we spend 98% of our time doing. I'll do some teaching and some coaching, and that's just a side service that we've offered as an adjunct at a small scale. But my daily schedule is 110% managing the business, growing it, doing what we do. I will say that the nutrition credential does add a level of professionalism to our business, where when clients come in and they see my background, then that just helps to assure them that they're dealing with a licensed healthcare professional who doesn't have his head up his rear end. So, and they like that. In terms of things I've changed since school, my God, that was 1,000 years ago, Richard. Let me think back for a second. So, I'd say that, you know, and of course, in modern America, if you go to any university and you get a professional degree in nutrition, you become a registered dietitian and a licensed nutritionist, there's going to be sort of the standard care, so to speak, in terms of what you learn. And then, of course, you begin to deep learning once you graduate and enter your career. So I think the biggest insight is just the fact that there are many different eating patterns that can be healthful versus sort of one way to eat sensibly. You know, it gets a lot of criticism, but the dietary guidelines here in America, you know, is this sort of a default set of eating habits for health professionals. But there's a lot of different ways to dice and slice your diet if you're eating whole, minimally processed foods where you can still maintain good health. And, you know, we see that if you look across the globe today, you see cultures where people live long, healthy lives, but their eating patterns are somewhat different. They're not the same. So there isn't just one way to get to a healthful body from a nutrition standpoint, but we need some variety. We need wholesome, unprocessed foods and so on. So, yeah.
I think one of the things in listening to, I'm going to forget his name now, Stewart from McMaster University, who talks a lot about
Yes.
protein.
Yeah, Stu
That,
Phillips, yeah.
protein requirements
Right.
over the years, and I remember, you know, if you read the early Nautilus books and whatnot,
Yeah.
you had sort of the muscle magazines were pushing the protein powders, and the
Yeah.
Nautilus camp were sort of saying that's a complete waste of money, and you only need to have 15% protein,
Right.
and you can get it from food. And I do agree that you can get all the protein you want from food
Yep.
because the chicken
Right.
breast steak's got a hell of a lot of protein.
It
And,
does. Yeah.
but I do see now, particularly with older populations,
Yeah.
that we
Right.
don't absorb, because I'm guessing you and I, because you gave me some dates, I'm 64, I'm guessing you're not too far away.
Yeah. I'm 59. So yeah. Right.
So as people get older,
Right.
we don't absorb it as well. It becomes more important, I think, to spread it out throughout the day and whatnot. And
Right.
you talked earlier about hypertrophy, and when it
Yeah.
happens, I really think, and as I start to question some of my clients, particularly the women, but even a
Yeah.
lot of the older men, because I always assumed, because I'm sort of a, you know, I eat meat. I just always have. My wife
Yeah.
makes meals and things like
Yeah.
that.
Right.
And, you know, I don't get up and have a bowl of cereal. I have, you know, something with protein. But I noticed that a lot of people, I was surprised, do
Yeah.
not consume very much protein. And I don't think there's anything, I think beyond adequate and maybe a
Yeah.
little surplus, there's no
Yeah.
magic. And
Yeah.
of course, people can debate what adequate and a little surplus is. But
Yeah.
whatever that is, beyond it, there's no magic. But I
Yeah.
think below it, there are
Yeah.
some very real
Yeah.
consequences
No
to
doubt about it.
not having enough protein.
Yes. We call it skewed eating, Richard. So older adults tend to exhibit this skewed eating pattern where maybe they'll get up, they'll have their breakfast, but they'll have coffee and a slice of bread or toast. That's it. No protein after fasting all night and not eating since 6 p.m. the previous day. So that's not too anabolic to say the least. So, right. We talk to our clients about that when they enroll in our training package and say, hey guys, here's what we're suggesting. We'll spread this out during the day as evenly as you can. You don't have to walk a tightrope, but be aware of these numbers and this dosing to optimize intake, particularly for you because you're somewhere between 60 and 90 and you're developing that anabolic resistance. And you're not like you were when you were 30 and your body soaked up protein like a sponge and used it. So they're open to that, but it takes some awareness and that requires some dietary shifts for a lot of folks who aren't in touch with that. So
let me tell you how I explain it, and I'd like you to challenge me and let me know if I'm making errors. What I
sure.
tell people is, you know, there's always catabolic processes and anabolic
Yeah, right.
processes going on. Our cells, various
Good.
cells, not just muscle cells, but
Yeah.
cells are continuously dying. My understanding that some of them renew over a course of years, some of them over a
Yeah.
course of months.
Right.
So So it's kind of like there's building. There's a guy on a brick wall, and there's
That's
a
right.
guy taking blocks off one end,
That's right.
and there's a guy putting blocks at the other end. So
Yeah.
you need protein for the anabolic part, in other words, for
Yep.
the new cells, and not just
Right.
talking about muscle. But if you
Right.
don't have it, what I tell people is if you're not ingesting that protein, your body will get the protein it needs from somewhere else.
That's right. Right.
So it will systematically take away from where it feels it's not as vital to where
Right.
it is vital. So is that kind of, although I oversimplify,
Yeah.
I'm sure, but is it
No, that's
basically accurate?
you. Yeah, that's basically accurate. There's always cell turnover. So there's tissue being built, tissue being broke down in every organ system in your body every day. So that's normal. That's just human physiology. And the thing about skeletal muscle that our colleagues or not colleagues, that our clients don't really recognize is that our body would rather not hold on to that skeletal muscle. It's optional. I mean, if we weren't moving and needing to go out to acquire food, of course, our ancestors had to go kill food and bring it home and eat it and find food. We just go to the supermarket, but skeletal muscle is there for basic locomotion. And so it has a ton of benefits, but it's metabolically expensive to maintain lean mass. So if we don't do the strength workout, if we don't eat adequate protein, that's a great source of amino acids for other metabolic processes. So we don't call it a storage depot because it's technically not that, but skeletal muscle will get degraded. Muscle mass will be broken down into its constituent amino acids to fuel other metabolic processes. So yeah, it's a tissue. If you're not eating enough protein and training, it's going to go away. And of course, we see that with muscle wasting, disease, and sarcopenia, and so on. So you're right. I mean, you're on the right path.
So Joe Weider wasn't completely out of it
Right.
in that. There was some benefits to
Yeah.
that. It wasn't magic the way he might, it wasn't like
No.
I'm going to look like Arnold if I take
Right.
Weider's super protein, but
That's right.
it is pretty important.
Yeah. Yeah. There's no doubt that it is. And here's the one striking thing is that when I was just getting out of college, the sports nutrition community really, the recommendations that they were making around strength training and protein per kilo of body weight is very similar to what the science says today. There have not been big seismic changes in what that literature tells us. And those were indirect studies where we measure what's called nitrogen balance. But today we have more sensitive measures of muscle protein synthesis. So we can be more precise to see what happens when I give you protein. I can measure that with newer tracking methods. But the literature has not changed seismically, and nobody really knows this because no one was around. I mean, our colleagues weren't looking at this in the early 80s. Those recommendations are about 1.5 grams per kilogram of body weight. If you look at Stu Phillips' data and what he would say today, it's about 1.6 grams per kilo. You can go higher for sure, but it's not that different from what we got from indirect studies 35 years ago. So that's an area that ironically hasn't changed too much. That would have been a sports medicine recommendation. Today, it's really a public health recommendation for our clients who need to gain muscle, right? So it's relevant to a lot of people.
The other day I was reading a report, Drew Bay. I'm sure you know of Drew Bay.
Yeah, I know Drew, yeah.
And Drew is currently on getting ripped. He's losing weight. He's been losing weight. And his last one said that he was aiming for 2.4 grams per kilogram.
Yeah.
And that was now specifically not to lose muscle while in a caloric deficit. So in other words, he's adding extra because he was in a caloric deficit. But he also said, and I meant to ask him, I haven't got a chance, that he's increasing that by 1.5% for every year over the age of 30.
Okay.
So I did and sorry, and I should say it's per kilograms of lean body mass.
Right.
Something like fat-free body weight, right?
Right.
So when I did the math for me, so I thought, and I don't know where you got the 1.5% for every year over 30.
Yeah.
I meant to ask him that. I don't know if you've ever heard that. So I did the math for me because I'm currently doing that. This morning I'm under 170 and I'm getting close to where I was when I was in a bodybuilding contest back in 2008.
Yeah.
And when I do the math, it comes to about 250 grams of protein a day.
Okay. Yeah. Sure.
And my calories are about 2,000, right?
Okay.
Where I'm
Yeah.
at right now. So if you do the
Yeah.
math, that's basically 50% of my calories
Yeah.
are coming from protein.
Right.
That doesn't sound excessive to you?
It seems high. Yeah, it seems high. I mean, he's in a unique circumstance. So, when you look at just the general dietary guidelines or public health recommendations that exist from different health agencies, they're not making recommendations based on people who are in a significant energy deficit like Drew is to lose body fat and strength training at the same time. He's trying to, of course, what he's trying to do is unique. He's trying to lose body fat, maintain every ounce of muscle he has, which is great to do. God bless him, and I'm glad he's doing it. I've seen his pictures; he looks great. But what he's doing is very unique. Not to say that wouldn't apply to other people, but he's on the upper end of that range because he's training intensely. He's in this energy deficit, and it's okay if he overshoots what the body's going to use because that protein is just going to get oxidized anyway. So,
that's what I'm thinking, like for myself, type of thing, although you have to
yeah,
start to get selective. So let me finish.
right.
I just got a few minutes left. You just attended the REC conference,
Yeah.
the Resistance
Yes.
Exercise Conference. I saw you did one of your Med Fitness minutes right from there. And,
Good.
I imagine that you mentioned earlier about getting an Imagine Strength leg press. So I
Yeah.
imagine that
Yeah.
you got to try one of those there and whatnot.
Yeah.
So what were some of the highlights of the Resistance Exercise Conference that in Minneapolis, right?
Well, in Minneapolis, yes, I have to give Luke Carlson credit and his team. They do a phenomenal job every year. They've been doing that for 14 years, and I'm just grateful to be able to connect, socialize, learn, just be with your colleagues. It's a great time, and so I enjoyed it. And thank you to Discover Strength and Luke for doing that. I'd say for us personally, for Med Fitness, one of my driving forces, I always like to be there, but I knew I wanted to try the Imagine Strength equipment and get on the leg press because we were shopping for one. So that was a big benefit for us to meet. What is his name?
Is it McAfee?
No, it's the engineer who was medics. Or maybe that is who it is.
It's Staffy. It rhymes with, it ends with Affy or something like that.
Yeah, I should know his name. I apologize, but I got to speak with him and ask him about the machines and whatnot and get on the machine. And we went ahead and ordered one. So that was great. That's going to be a great addition to our studio. We're using a plate loaded hammer leg press as our second leg press machine. We've got a Medix, and it's just a little cumbersome with loading plates. So we needed a selectorized machine. So this will be a great addition. We're excited to
the
have it.
Imagine Strength line, I'm getting the impression they're similar to MedX in a lot of ways, but
Yes.
they're somewhat more economical. Is that?
Yeah, this machine is going to cost us about $7,000, but I think a new Medix would be at least 12. So yeah, they're more economical, right? They have a slightly more streamlined footprint. It was just as easy to use. It felt great. It'll be a good addition. So I think that's what they're appealing to are these Medix sort of users who would love a good tool that is thousands of dollars less as an option. So yeah.
And they have a lumbar machine.
They do. I didn't get on it. I did see it. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah.
And
I think they've been really creative.
you talk to the other attendants who were there who got a chance to get on it and their thoughts on it?
People liked it. Everyone I talked to, because I wanted to get everyone's input. I want to say, let me ask these guys, because I didn't go through a full workout on the equipment, but I just got on and played around with it and tested it. Everyone seemed to like it. I mean, you could split hairs and say it's a little bit different than the Medx here and there and blah, 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 but everyone seemed to be positive about it. I asked Luke, because they're using it in their franchise studios. It's I think it's the only equipment they're going to use. So he loves it. They like it. So generally good feedback.
So is that there's usually I've been to one of those conferences, and there's usually this,
Yeah,
I think it's the Saturday morning workout.
that's
So
right.
it
Yeah.
was the Saturday morning workout done on those machines?
It was exclusively on those machines. That's the first time they've done that. Yeah, right, right. So it was exciting to see it in action. Everyone seemed to like it. So yeah, good news so far. So yeah. And we, us practitioners, we need good tools to use that fit our budget and work with the clientele that we're working with. So I'm excited to implement its use. Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
I
I
think the other
hear
thing that's
about having a selectorized machines. If you look behind me and whatnot, I have about 21 machines here, and about half,
okay.
well, I'm thinking half, I don't know, but I have some selectorized and some plate loading. And the plate
Yeah,
loading takes a lot of time
right.
to just set it up and get ready for the next client.
Right. They're great tools. It's just the time issue, right? I mean, we do a 2-to-1 supervision ratio. So if I'm putting 300 pounds on that leg press for you and I'm putting a ton of plates on, it's hard for me to go coach Sue over here because I'm getting this all loaded up. I mean, you can do it, but it's just not as simple as putting in the pin and going and being with the client, providing that tighter supervision ratio. Yeah.
So as we get ready to sign off, I know we're getting close to our time. Any parting
Yeah.
words, messages that you would give to either your colleagues, people, clients?
Yeah. I'd say to my colleagues, I would say that we're sort of entering into a new domain of lifestyle medicine here. As you may know, Richard, one of the fastest growing specialties within medicine is lifestyle medicine. And that's just the use of evidence-based exercise and nutrition programs to prevent and treat chronic illness. So we're entering a whole new arena of seeing the strength training practitioner as a critical component of the healthcare system. And that's going to take some time for that to be fully embraced, but we should really be viewed as just like the nurse, the physician, the dietitian, the occupational therapist, all part of the collective healthcare team. We're part of that system now. We're administering frontline life-saving interventions with our strength training programming. So it's an exciting time to be involved in strength training because of its urgent need and the benefits it provides. So I'd say keep up the good work, push forward, work hard, keep your nose to the grindstone, and keep doing what we're doing. So we're advancing the well-being of the world with what we're doing. So other than that, I think it's just a great time for anyone who's considering this as a career. I mean, 30, 40 years ago, this didn't exist the way it is today. So now someone can be in college and say, hey, I see what Richard does. I'd like to have my own business as well. And I know Discover Strength has made great strides with their franchise model as well, giving new graduating students and other people opportunities to do this work. So I think all of us collectively need to understand that we're creating that future for the next generation behind us to be able to apply what we're doing and even participate at the same time. So
Great point. And along the same lines, I will also reciprocate by saying you keep up the great work.
well,
I really
thank you.
enjoy your Med Fitness Minutes.
Yep.
I steal with no shame whatsoever from them. Put
Please
them on
do.
my
Please do.
page
Yeah.
and whatnot
Right.
because they're great little gems. And often, it's been said this day and age that the attention span of people is less than
That's
that
right.
of a goldfish. So being able to
That's right.
just make a quick point real
Yeah.
quick, kudos to you.
Yeah.
It's a great idea. But one of I know, at least I'm aware of it, I'm long-winded. And sometimes being concise is not one of my strong points. So kudos to you for doing that. And once again, thanks so much for taking the time. And I hope we can do this again at some point in the future.
Absolutely, Richard. I thank you for taking the time. It's a pleasure to talk with you and discuss all things strength training. Keep up the good work yourself. And I look forward to connecting down the road.
and I will provide you with both a podcast version and a YouTube version of this.
Fantastic. We will share that with everyone. So
Okay, all the very best.
thanks, Richard. Bye-bye.
Bye for now.